Article 84. May I have a motion?
Excuse me, Madam Moderator, while I just look at it quickly to make sure that a few editorial changes were made. There were 4 editorial changes to be made. Looks like we've had a little bit of miscommunication. Can I get with Matt, just insert 4 words, please?
Okay, do you want to read your motion?
I move favorable action on Article 84 as written with 3 minor changes of wording as follows. In paragraph 2, middle line, excuse me, I do see the word senior was added to affordable housing. And paragraph 3, line 2, this is duly appointed. Okay, we've got that one. Matt, could you scroll to the end? Okay, it looks like all the words were placed. Again, Madam Moderator, to the body, I move Rick Boucher, Precinct 2. I move favorable action on Article 84 as written with 3 minor changes of wording as follows. Wherever it says affordable housing without the word senior is submitted. And on paragraph 3, where it points by duly appointed RFP review committee as per the town's appointing authority. In that, those changes have been made.
So your motion is as
my
on the screen?
My motion is to approve as currently written in the motion.
I have one question. You have a duly appointed committee of how many?
Our recommendation would be 7.
Would you take a friendly amendment to include 7 in your motion?
Yes. To amend it?
Do I have a second on Mr. Boucher's motion before us, which is on the screen, and adding the number 7 as to the number of people who would serve on the committee? Thank you. To speak to the article?
Article 84. Seniors in our community need affordable housing badly. We have only 104 60-plus-year-old state-funded affordable units open to seniors over 60 who are eligible by virtue of minimal income. As of 3 weeks ago, the director of the Wareham Housing Authority confirmed that there are 125 people currently on the waiting list, and there is on average a 3 to 4 year wait. The town also needs additional playing fields for our youth. Westfield has the potential to become a model youth sports complex. Additional facilities are sought after by our organizers of youth sports, and there is stiff competition for the available fields. The town needs revenue. This development would bring in needed revenue to support services in these hard economic times. All units will be categorized as affordable, 50 to be rented for less than $500 per month, and meeting the town's 40B 10% requirement of the state. Matt, could you put the maps up? One of the things that we confronted on the Westfield Review Committee, of which I was a part, was a lot of confusion on our parts and things that we had heard from the public at previous town meetings regarding this property. Some people thought that the entirety of it was one 77-acre property. In reality, there are 4 different properties of various sizes. Some people thought that if part of the land were to be leased for development of senior affordable housing, that there would be a loss of recreational fields. Indeed, when this land was taken in 1977, one of the 4 parcels, the 17.5 acre, was completely cleared for development of recreational fields. I didn't find that out myself until in July when I went to the site myself. I was amazed to see that property and its condition. 17.5 acres were cleared with the use of $500,000 of CPC funds. And in the past several years, 8 years I believe, they've been pretty much neglected and totally by the town. And only 2 fields were actually developed. Matt, can you show the next page? Matt, can you show the recreational field, what the development should look like? That 17.5 acres should have 2 baseball fields, which it does, a Babe Ruth field and a Little League field, a soccer field and a football field. Currently, the soccer and football field area is basically wasteland. When I looked at it in July, it had approximately 15 inches of weeds and grass growth, and it was not being used properly. The parking lot had never been paved, as plans would call for, and a walking path around the entire perimeter of the property had never been developed. Can you show the next? The 18.5 acres we're talking about for use for affordable housing is right here. There's a buffer zone between the 17.5 acre recreational lot and what would be the affordable housing, leaving 21 acres of open space. This would be a beautiful facility if we could just get down the road. Keep in mind, all we're asking for here is a vote to allow 18.5 acres to be leased to an affordable housing developer. That's all. This process is still years in the making, but unless we at least give our Board of Selectmen the authority to lease a small portion of this land, nothing happens. We can't come back to you with RFPs for your approval. We can't come back to you for a request for CPC funds, of which $500,000 is all that's being asked for. This town has leverage to get this paid for in its entirety by federal, state, and private funds because we already own the land and we have the $500,000 of CPC funds. As one of our committee members said, who was not familiar with any of this prior to his involvement on the committee, this should be a no-brainer. I ask for your approval.
Yeah, 5 minutes, right?
Not yet, but we will.
Okay. Gentleman on my right. I'm sorry. May I have the vote of the Board of Selectmen?
The Board of Selectmen voted favorable action, 2 in favor and 2 opposed.
And may I have the vote of the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee voted favorable action, 5 in favor, 4 against. No abstentions.
Gentleman on my right.
Peter Balzerini, Precinct 3. I would like to add an amendment to the end of Article 84. I'll read the amendment that I'd like to propose. And further, to see that any RFP accepted by the Board of Selectmen contain in the resident selection criteria the following condition: that all units constructed on the Westfield site under this agreement be made available as affordable rental units to senior citizens only. Senior citizens being defined as individuals 55 years of age or older, or couples in which at least one spouse is 55 years of age or older. And I have
You have that in writing?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. I have a second. I have a second up here. To speak to the amendment, Mr. Balzerini? Okay.
Point of order.
Sure.
state your point.
I believe the federal definition of senior citizens starts at 60. 55 is AARP. So I think somebody should check this. I checked it a week ago or 2 weeks ago and it was 60.
Well, I think we can define it in any terms we wish, I would think. I don't believe that I don't think that falls in line with anything, but be that as it may. If I could continue to speak on
to your
this.
amendment.
I had also added a further part of the amendment, which was already addressed when the original article was read, and that was to add the word senior in front of any place where it said affordable housing. Now, what's brought this to me, brought me here and brought this amendment forward is simple. Over the last, well, how many other town meetings that we've been bantering around the idea of senior affordable housing at Westfield, we've been constantly talking about senior affordable housing. But I don't know why, but I went into the town website and I read the RFP that's listed under Westfield RFP. And granted, I understand now that that's not going to be the one that's going to be used here. But I was simply amazed. Much to my chagrin, the term senior never appeared anywhere in that RFP proposal. In fact, right on the cover of it, I didn't download the whole thing because it's 38 pages long, but it was entitled Proposal Form of Lease to be utilized in connection with construction of Westfield Affordable Housing Site. And nowhere in the RFP did it ever stipulate that these units had to be rented to senior citizens. Now, we can debate this issue after I get through, and if you want to, if we want to do it, we can do it, or we don't have to. But the point is, if we are going to enter into an agreement, then I believe that we should, if we're going to build senior housing, let's build senior housing. Let's make it 100% senior housing. Because under the old RFP, if the units weren't rented, the developer had the option to rent them to anyone as affordable units. I got to thinking, I said, we're going to build ball fields next to the senior citizens complex, and the kids playing in it are probably living there anyhow. Because you could, under the old guys, you could still rent these things to anybody. Again, the debate can ensue as to whether or not we want to do this, but I think before we even begin the debate, I think as a town we should set the rules and regulations for what is going to be done. And I believe that 100% senior affordable housing is what should be built on Westfield. And from what was just read into the original article, I now believe at least that was the intent. But I think my amendment would clarify that and make it, would put it in concrete. If we're going to build this, let's build it as senior affordable housing. And I think that will take away a lot of the controversy that's surrounding this as to the motivation and why it's being done and who's going to benefit and all that kind of thing. Let's build senior housing, let's make it for seniors, and let's leave it at that. So I really strongly would appreciate your support of this amendment. Thank you.
On my left.
Nancy Miller, Community Preservation. I just want to make it clear to this body that Community Preservation has not received a request for funds for Westfield. So for the prior speaker to stand up and say there's $500,000 in community preservation funds for this project is certainly a problem. The other problem is that this body only, 10 weeks ago voted against a business getting funds. So we don't quite know where we're standing on that. Thank you.
Gentleman on my right. On my right, Mr. DeMullen.
Speaking before this body is a new experience for me, so I ask your indulgence. I'll be direct and brief. I support Article 84. Ted DeMullen, Precinct 3. I would like to point out to this assembly that all or most of all of you have comfortable homes to enjoy the rest of your lives. I support this article because it will give some senior citizens a decent place to live out their remaining years with dignity and comfort, two basics which have evaded them to date, either due to lack of education, poor planning, or just ill fortune along the way. Many of these people have performed services for this town, have been volunteers, and in some have served this country in our armed forces. These people are Wareham residents and are legal Americans. Many of you sympathizers with illegals in this country, and in too many cases provide them with public services. How can you justify not providing a final chance at good living to these unfortunate members of our society? We are coming to the holiday season where our churches and synagogues stress the age-old peace on earth, goodwill toward men. Please keep this in mind when you cast your vote. Give these unfortunate something to look forward to as they age. This is a win-win situation for these folks and a win-win situation for the town of Wareham. I ask you for your support of Article 84. Thank you.
On my left?
Madam Moderator, do we have an amendment before us to be voted on?
The amendment is up for discussion. Do you wish to discuss the amendment?
No, I want to discuss the article. Should I move that the amendment be voted on?
I think the amendment is germane to the original article, and I really honestly think that we can speak to, because the amendment is for senior affordable housing. Let me read the amendment: that all units constructed on the Westfield site under this agreement be made available as affordable rental units to senior citizens only. Senior citizens being defined as individuals 55 years of age or older. So I think it's germane.
Okay.
Could you identify yourself, please?
Andrea Smith,
Thank you.
Precinct 5. A friend of mine who could not be here tonight because of her health reasons, and who is a senior living in a mobile home park in Wareham, told me last Friday that although she has received an average of $900 in fuel assistance from the state in recent years, she has been notified that her fuel assistance for this year has been cut to $400. My friend told me that she was informed when she inquired about the fuel assistance cut that the fuel assistance cut is statewide and affecting nearly every senior who has previously received and continues to qualify for fuel assistance. My friend has not experienced an increase in income that would justify the cut in her fuel assistance. What is a senior who has already been keeping their thermostat at 65 degrees in order to afford fuel supposed to do to offset the decrease in fuel assistance? Are they supposed to turn their thermostat lower and add another layer of sweaters? Rent for housing at Westfield would not only be scaled to resident income, but it would include in the rent the cost of heat. Madam Moderator, may I ask Council about the appropriateness of information which I wish to offer?
You can ask the question of me, and then we'll see if Council would like to answer it.
In the interest of full disclosure, I stand as a resident, but am a correspondent for both the Wareham Observer and Tri-Town Observer. While covering the issue of affordable senior housing in Marion, I gathered information which I think would clarify issues regarding Westfield. Is it appropriate for me to offer that information?
You have had 16 seconds. It would have been appropriate in the amount of time that you had. If you would like to ask for additional time, we could put the question before the body.
I would like to ask for additional time. May I have 60 seconds more, please? I do not think I'll need that much.
Okay, we have a request for an additional 60 seconds for Mrs. Smith. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? You have your 60 seconds.
Madam Moderator, through you to the body, for those who may question whether Westfield is viable, 48 units of brand new affordable senior housing are now rising in Marion through the exact same method proposed for Westfield. One of the developers who submitted an RFP for Westfield has successfully brought several similar proposals to fruition and is the current developer of Marion Senior Housing. I urge everyone here to move Westfield forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Selectman Ekstrom.
I believe I was Dr. Sylvia, and these two were before me.
Okay, so you sat and then came back up?
Yes.
Okay. On my left.
Madam Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, I have to admire the wisdom of my colleague. I rise in support of the amendment. And the reason I do is because the amendment just makes so much sense. It provides a clarity and and provides for no gray area. It's black and white. The purpose is clear. And what's more important, the purpose will be clear from this point on if this article gets approved. And the neat thing about this amendment is whether you're for the article or against the article, the amendment still makes sense. Because if you're against it, well, then it's moot. But if you're for it, it does guarantee that it's putting our seniors first, and it's filling a void in this town for senior housing forever. God forbid if I should lose my house or if I should get ill and not be able to afford to live on my own in my own home, I would like to know that 20 or 30 or 40 years down the road when I'm old that I might have a place to go. So I strongly urge you to support the amendment. It's a good amendment. Thank you.
On my right.
I'm sorry, point of information. Could we just get some clarity? Madam Moderator, did you say that there was no, that because the amendment was germane to the article, that we won't, once we end this, we will be voting on the article as amended with that?
No, we will vote on the amendment
okay.
and then the article, but the discussion can be germane to the overall.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
On my right.
I'd like to move, Ellen Begley, Precinct 2, I'd like to move the question.
I believe that we have not had quite enough discussion. This is on the amendment. Are you moving the question on the amendment? I have a second to move the question on the amendment. All those in favor to move the question on the amendment, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The amendment passes. We're now back to Article 84 as amended. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so we'll take a vote on the amendment. And the amendment is that will be added at the end of the article, and further to see that any RFP accepted by the Board of Selectmen contain in the resident selection criteria the following condition: that all units constructed on the Westfield site under this agreement be made available as affordable rental units to senior citizens only. Senior citizens being defined as individuals 55 years of age or older, or couples in which at least one spouse is 55 years of age or older. So the vote now comes on the amendment. It requires a majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? The amendment passes. We now are back to the original motion, including as amended. And I believe Mrs. Ishihara on my left is next.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Margaret Ishihara, Minot Ave. I just have a couple of questions on this article. My concern is the town-owned property, somewhat giving control over to the private developer that might come in under the 99-year lease. And I'd like to hear what assurances we are going to have that where we have concern for the senior citizens here in Wareham, that in fact the senior citizens here in Wareham are going to get priority over others that might come in. I think my sense of this sort of development is that the monies that come in for this kind of development are not just going to be from the town, they're not just going to be from CPC, that there's going to be other private funding out there, there might be federal funding, there might be state funding, and they have their own criteria. And if that becomes into play, then it's not necessarily restricted to senior citizens in the town of Wareham about whom we've expressed such concern. And so that's my concern. I just want to raise that as a discussion point and to hear what some of the powers that might be have to say on what assurances we have that what we're trying to do here to help senior citizens in Wareham is really going to happen.
To answer the question?
From what I understand, and the way that this is being presented, it's going to be Wareham senior citizens are going to have a preference. Now, typically speaking, in all other projects where there is a residency preference, the residents take over 80% of the units anyways. So this shouldn't be a factor, and this is one of the things that we are requiring, that the seniors in Wareham do have a preference.
If I could add to that, Madam Moderator. Yes. The way that it works is that there's a lottery system in place. The first 70% of the occupants will be Wareham residents. The next round is open, but anybody who doesn't make the first round is put into the second round. And if anybody who doesn't make the second round is put into the third round. So it's almost guaranteed that it is guaranteed that 70% will be our residents. And the next rounds of lottery will bring more Wareham residents if they are in fact available for, if there are in fact unit residents who are still looking for preference. So it works as a lottery system, 70% are guaranteed.
Thank you. On my left?
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Donna Barrows, Precinct 2. I'd like to just clear what Madam Selectman just said. The only way that it would be guaranteed that it is Wareham residents and controlled is if it is done through the Wareham Housing Authority. If that is not implied in this, it can go any way, lottery or not.
If I may, Madam Moderator,
To answer
respond.
the question?
Mrs. Barrows is correct in what she's saying, and one of the things that we fully expect and anticipate is in our discussions with the Wareham Housing Authority Director, something that hasn't happened in the past, is that the Wareham Housing Authority will control the leasing and the lottery of this property. And in doing so, they will also be able to enhance their own coffers, because other developers who've come into town have picked their brains, taken all of their information, and then gone and used somebody else to manage their leasing programs. That's just happened at the retreat at Union Pond, and it also happened at the 815 Main Street, and it happened at another complex earlier than that. So the Wareham Housing Authority has unfortunately been penalized in the past, and we are fully aware of the situation and have every intention, I would hope, whether it's me sitting on this board or anyone else sitting on this board, and the Review and Recommendation Committee will ensure that the Wareham Housing Authority has a huge interest and involvement in the lottery process that will take place for the senior housing that we all want and intend to be for our citizens. Thank you.
Gentleman on my left.
Larry McDonald, Precinct 6. First off, I'd like to ask the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, would you be willing to put that in the amendment that the Wareham Housing Authority is going to be the people that are going to control this?
I have no problem with that. One of the things that the committee discussed was, we discussed a lot of different things. We tried deliberately not to overload the article with too many things, but if that's the wish of this body and if that's what it takes for this article to get passed for the senior citizens of our community, I would be more than graciously accept that friendly amendment.
I'll second it for you.
Thank you.
Okay, to speak, Ms.
Well,
on my left.
I think one of the things we need to do here is clarify the difference between just the first slide. hold on just a second. Technical difficulties. Just the first one after that, yeah. I think we need to clarify the difference between subsidized, low-income, affordable housing and affordable housing. And the reason for that is they're night and day. Number one, the people that are going to the Agawam Village and the people that are going to Redwood are paying rents averaging less than $300. Now, one of the proponents of the article said earlier that the rents are going to be, for the affordable units, well, they're all supposed to be affordable, but the ones that I guess that are what they call 30% units are going to be $500. Most of the people at Agawam Village, the people that are applying for those units, can't afford the $500. So,
Madam Moderator.
Please state your point.
Madam Moderator, we're talking about RFPs that are no longer valid. We're putting out new RFPs.
That's not the point. I think that's not a point of order. Go ahead, Mr. McDonald.
I'll say it again. The proponent of the article said that they were going to fix the affordable ones, which they all should be affordable, but what they would refer to as the 30% group are going to be fixed at $500. People that are living in...
I don't think there's been any dollar value placed on these.
I beg to differ.
To answer the question.
If I could answer the question, the 30% of your income, being in the housing business for over 35 years, I know this in and out, 30% is 30%. If you make $300 a month, you're going to pay $90. If you make $1,000 a month, you're going to pay the $333 of a month. The 30% rather, 30% of the. But that's what the 30% means. The housing authority is not the 30%. It's a different.
To further answer Ms. McDonald's question, what I said was that 50 units, the first 50 potential units, will be rented for less than $500. And getting to Mrs. Bronk's perspective, based on income level, certainly they will be paying less than $500. And to add to that, based on health expense credits, they could actually be paying as little as $25 per month.
What my understanding was, and I had a conversation today with Little Neck Village in Marion, was that the 30% was a qualification. Wasn't what they were paying in rent, was a qualification for the low income or the low priced units. That's what they are. They're qualifying them for it. And it's also based on, my understanding, it's 30% of the Plymouth County medium income.
You have 30 seconds.
All right. Well, my last question is to the chairman. What was the vote of the committee on submitting the report and the article?
To answer the question.
It's interesting that you're bringing this up because it really doesn't. The vote we were unanimous in wanting to bring it, but the vote at the last meeting, is that what you're asking specifically for? It was 3-3, the first vote.
Okay. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentleman on my right.
Charles Rowley, Precinct 5. One of the things we haven't talked about, and which I think is important to Article 84, is something that was alluded to in the report which we got for Article 83. It was suggested that there was some concern during the discussion about the title to the property. I'm wondering if that issue was clarified, whether or not there is a concern over changing what is deemed in the article to be municipal purposes, and whether or not that was a request was made for a legal opinion as to whether or not what the conveyance was. I have no idea when it was conveyed to the town back in 1977. So I'd ask that question. I also, just for my own information, and I realize that you're not, you don't have an RFP before you right now, but approximately how many units are you considering?
To answer the question.
To answer the question, there have been several opinions written by Kopelman and Page stating that the use of the land for senior affordable housing is an accepted municipal use.
My question
for the-
relates to the conveyance, though, of the property. How was it conveyed originally? Was
It
it
was
conveyed by
conveyed-
deed with restrictions in it?
No, there were no restrictions on the deed, Mr. Rowley. That was part of the issue. That the restrictions were later placed on the deed without a vote of town meeting, which is why we have made, as part of this article, an attempt, we believe, that will clarify the vote of town meeting to accept it, to include the restrictions that were later placed on the deed.
Who placed the restrictions?
The former Board of Selectmen in 1977. They did it without a vote of town meeting. This article attempts to rectify that by clarifying it and bringing the vote of town meeting. It sounds like it is a little backwards, and I apologize that we can't go back to 1977 and fix it from there. But what we're attempting to do with this article is to bring a vote of town meeting that will conform with what the deed says.
Thank you. And roughly how many units are you considering for the property?
Well, that would be part of the input of the review and recommendation committee that would be formed to work with the Board of Selectmen. But the last time we looked at it, we were looking at between 150 and 200 units. That would also hopefully bring us very close to our 40B requirement, as every single one of these units would be counted as an affordable unit in the town of Wareham.
One-bedroom units or two?
There would be a combination of one bedroom and 2 units. Again, I believe the last time that we went out, we asked for, I think it was 75 one bedroom. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I should be better prepared to answer that question for you. But there was a combination of both one bedroom and 2 bedroom. It was 75% one bedroom and the rest were 2, I believe. Thank you. Mrs. Ekstrom is helping me here.
Thank you. In light of the fact that the last one was rough, let's say for the sake of argument, was
40 seconds.
Was 100 units, and they were one-bedroom units. That's 100 bedrooms at 110 gallons per bedroom. Board of Health is going to have some fun with that in light of Article 80, which passed tonight.
Thank you. If I could just respond to that.
Well, I don't want to get into it back
Sure.
and forth.
Sorry.
There wasn't a question there. Gentleman on my right, Mr. Paulson. State your point. Can you come to the microphone?
Liz McDonald, Precinct 6. If I understand the previous speaker, he had asked a question about the restrictions, and was there a legal counsel opinion on it?
I believe that Mrs. Selectman Donahue answered his question.
Okay, I have an opinion.
No.
This is from town council on this.
No, you asked for a point of information. Mr. Rowley had his questions answered. Gentleman on my right, Mr. Paulson.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Dick Paulson, Precinct 3. And to that question, you've heard the expression clarified several times tonight. And I'll tell you why we're going to have to clarify it. I have here a document from a law firm. The law firm happens to be Koppelman and Page. And they do in fact say in their letter, it was addressed to Bruce Savageau, that in their opinion, it was okay to go forward the way we're suggesting. However, on the second page, which most of us don't know about, I don't think, it says, an argument can be made, however, this is from K&P now, based on the orders of taking, and then goes on to say, I recommend. The word recommend, a very strong word versus my opinion. Goes on to say from there, further step is required under Chapter 40, 15A, that the Board of Selectmen must determine that the Westfield site is no longer needed for the purposes. So here's a lawyer writing for the, being paid by the town, recommending the following. And while it is my opinion that the Westfield property was acquired for general municipal purposes and is presently held by the Board of Selectmen, which is what they've been saying right along, goes on to say, for any municipal purposes, I recommend, that word again, recommend.
30 seconds.
That it's such a two-thirds transfer vote be sought. Two-thirds, not majority.
Point of order.
State your point.
That letter was addressed to me personally in my capacity as chairman of the Board of Selectmen at the time That sentence is being
That's
taken...
not a point of order. Thank you,
out of
Mr. Savageau.
context.
Go ahead, Mr. Paulson. You have 30 seconds.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. It's a letter dated July 16th, 2009, and it is addressed
point of order.
to Honorable...
State your point.
We're talking about a legal opinion here. We have counsel right here. I don't know if this counsel wrote the letter. I don't know why we're offering legal opinions when we have counsel right here. If you'd like to answer the question, I think you should answer the question.
Well, I'd like Mr. Paulson to finish speaking, and if he has a question, we certainly would put it before council.
The letter was addressed to the Honorable Bruce Savageau and members of the Board of Selectmen at Wareham Town Hall. It is, at least to my feeling, is a public document. Am I being told it's not a public document?
Mr. Paulson, is there a question there? Your
Yes,
time
there is a
up.
question.
And your question is?
The question is, do we have, or should we, have a two-thirds vote rather than a majority vote?
To answer the question?
May I answer the question as...
No, you don't have the floor, Mr. Savageau.
Thank you.
Would you like to answer the question?
I will have it.
Madam Moderator, through you to the previous speakers, the opinion to which the honorable gentleman refers was written by, I believe, Attorney Gene McKnight of my office. And I can tell you that this afternoon I brought that opinion to the attention of Ms. McKnight along with a copy of this article just to clarify what her view was of this matter. And I can tell you that after reviewing this particular article and the facts, it was Ms. McKnight's opinion, and it is my opinion, that the quantum of vote which is necessary to approve this article is a majority vote. The reason that it is a majority vote is that restrictions that were allegedly put on the deed, the restrictions were put on without authorization of town meeting, and thus they are non-binding. So to remove those restrictions, even though we're calling them clarification, all the language relating to clarification to Chapter 40, Section 15A is unnecessary and falls into the category, wonderful legal word, surplusage. The word surplusage means unnecessary. Now, Attorney McKnight, when she wrote that opinion, indicated in the beginning that it was her opinion that a majority quantum of vote would suffice. But real estate attorneys, as you all know from dealing with them, or some of you know from dealing with them, always act with an abundance of caution. If you wish to act with an abundance of caution, you may seek a two-thirds vote. But it is Ms. McKnight's opinion, and it is my opinion, that only a majority vote is required.
Thank you, Counsel.
To speak to the question?
And what is your point? So you would like to set the time of adjournment to go beyond the hour of 10 and complete the warrant? Second. Do I have a second? We have a motion before us to go beyond the hour of 10 for the purpose of completing all of the articles in the warrant. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? It passes. Gentleman on my left.
Hi, yes, Madam Moderator. Steve Curry, Precinct 5. I just had a couple of questions. The first part of this article, basically we're voting on to add the words senior affordable housing to the term municipal purposes. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, what was that again, Mr. Curry?
In the beginning of the first paragraph of the article.
Point of order.
State your point.
Madam Moderator, there were two speakers standing here on this side before this speaker got in line. Why aren't you recognizing?
Mr. Monahan I had next, but he sat down, so I went to Mr. Curry, who was up after him. Okay, Mr. Curry, and then I'll go back to the other side.
Point of order, Madam Moderator. Point of order. This gentleman is unable to stand for any length of time and was leaning on that seat. He didn't sit down again.
Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't realize that.
Madam Moderator.
I will go to him next. Would you like to yield?
I'd like to yield my time to the
Thank
gentleman.
you very
please.
much. Gentleman on my right.
Thank you. Tom Monahan, Precinct 3, Great Hill Estates. Through you, Madam Moderator, to the body, I beg you to consider favorable action on Article 84. I rise to ask consideration for the youth who need recreation fields, the young parents of our community, the middle-aged parents, the families without children, the considerable elderly in our community, people of high, middle, and low income. I'm pleased that you would represent the town tonight, represent the 20,000 residents, the 10,000 who vote in general election, the 2,000 who vote in town election, fairly represent the non-binding referendum that wanted this project. I'm begging for those who are watching at home on television who are unable to make it. I even want to include those who don't care about the issues or don't know about the issues. But there's certainly people who are not here, who are well informed, and if they could be here and vote for it, they would. I rise to beg you, friends on both sides of the 7 nights that we've spent together, to rise, yes, to rise, and there's an action verb, to rise above our differences and support this project.
Okay, Mr. Curry, and then I'll go back to on my right.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. My first question, like it said in the first paragraph, says municipal purposes shall mean for any purpose a town meeting maintains legal title to land. This shall include but not limited to municipal buildings, schools, fire, police buildings, passive recreation, and or senior affordable housing. I believe probably back in 1977, senior affordable housing wasn't in the verbiage then. So one, are we voting to add that to the municipal purposes definition for this article?
Yes.
Yes, okay. And the main part of the articles basically is to give permission to the Board of Selectmen to lease or rent out the land. Does this come back to town meeting for any approval? Or strictly, once we vote on this, town meeting has no say in who it's leased to?
To answer the question?
Or conveyed to?
To answer the question, I believe that's why they have the review committee, so that there is something else.
No, the review committee, RFP review and recommendation committee, basically it says to give the selectmen power to lease or convey property.
To answer the question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Moderator. Only the Board of Selectmen has the authority to lease the property out. But we did consider the fact that input should be made and a recommendation committee should have the opportunity to review it. That was one of the problems that we had last time, was that there was no mechanism for input by the public. So I think that, you know, again, we talked a little bit about it here earlier throughout this meeting. You vote for the people who sit up at this table, give them the opportunity to try to get the best deal for our senior citizens with input from the community. Thank you.
Okay, my third question is, from what I understand from previous speakers, there is currently no RFPs on the table. It's going to be a clean slate going forward. Excuse me, going forward.
To answer the question?
There will be no RFPs on the table unless you pass this article this evening.
My question was, is there any, there were some previous
There are
RFPs
none.
before.
No, they're all void.
All void.
This body voted to toss those out the window, basically, the last time. So there's nothing on the table at this point in time unless you authorize the board to go forward with input from the community to get some new proposals, which will include requiring the developer to rehabilitate and maintain the playing fields, which will also be advantage for our youth.
And my last question, Madam Moderator, are any RFPs from the committee come back before town meeting or not for approval?
To answer the question, if any RFPs, would they come back to the town meeting for approval?
No. The answer to that is no.
So just to clarify, we vote to give the Board of Selectmen power to lease or convey property with recommendations from...
Point of order.
State your point.
Time. This speaker's been up a lot longer than 2 minutes.
He has probably... He's right on target. He's got 30 seconds.
That's all I need, Matt. Thank you. Just lost my train of thought here. So this article is to, if we vote it in favorable action, to give the power to the Board of Selectmen to release or convey any RFPs come before the committee, and then it's the board and the committee's decision as to who does the project, so it does not come back for town meeting approval.
That is correct, Mr. Curry.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Begley, I believe, is next on my right. Ms. Begley, I think you were up first.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Moderator.
Could you stand behind one another, because you've been bouncing back and forth and I'm not sure who is next, so if you would stand behind one another, that would be helpful. Mrs. Begley, go ahead.
Ellen Begley, Precinct 2. I don't want to make any enemies here, but I'd like to move the
Can
question.
you speak into the microphone?
I'd like to move the question, please.
No.
We have a motion before us to move the question. Requires a 2/3 vote. All those in favor of moving the question, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. It passes. Article 84 is now before you as amended. This requires a majority vote. All those in favor, actually, I'm going to take a hand count on this. All those in favor, would the tellers please come forward? All those in favor, please raise your cards to be counted. We're in the middle of a vote. We are voting on Article 84 with the amendment included as amended. All those in favor, please hold your cards high. Section 1.
Section 126,
Section 126. Section 2.
30.
I'm sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, please. Section 2.
30.
Number 1 is 26. Section 2 is 30.
Yes.
Section 3.
Section 3, 61, 61.
Section 3 is 61. Section 4.
Section 4, 48, 48.
Section 4 is 48. All those opposed, please raise your cards. Hold those cards up high until the tellers count. Ladies and gentlemen, please, if we could just keep the chatter down. Section 1.
Section 1, 5.
Section 1, 5. Section 2.
3.
Section 2, 3. Section 3.
16, 1, 6.
Section 316, Section 4,
Section 4-8.
Section 4-8. The vote is 165 in the affirmative, 32 in the negative. Ladies and gentlemen, please. We have more business to continue.
Thank you.
Article 85. May I have a motion, please? We still have articles ahead of us. Please don't leave.